Hello everyone, I'm Steve. Mark's on his way home, I think, and this is Smokey Steve and Mark. Either welcome or welcome back, and happy Friday! TGIF, indeed. It's been a week. It's been a long week, at least on my end. They all feel long, but this one in particular, every week I say that, never mind. I'm sure everybody had a long week, so I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone's safe, look after yourselves. I'm remasking periodically, because I figure why not, it'll probably come up again. But at any rate, it is the weekend. I am very happy. Tonight we are getting Uber Eats. It's a good thing. Thank you all, by the way, for understanding. There was no video yesterday. Mark and I were working late, and it wasn't... I could crap something out, but I didn't want to do anything kind of half-assed. So thank you for being patient. I hope you enjoy the video today. So we are going to do a story time. And today's story time, I'm going to tell you the story of the Mad Tea Party. Now, this event, the Mad Tea Party, was dubbed such kind of like by my mother, maybe my aunt. It's a story, I don't do trigger warnings, so consider that your trigger warning. It's about a mental health episode that I had in late 2011, and if you have a bit of dark humor to yourself, you may laugh along with this. It was serious. I needed to go to a hospital at the end of it. However, in hindsight, some things are a bit peculiar enough to crack a smile. So I don't mean to make light of mental health concerns because they can be very serious and some can be potentially deadly. But when I talk about my own, I'll talk about them how I damn well please. And so it's okay with me if you laugh a little bit. So, 2011. I didn't start to get better until May of 2012. Where I ended up in jail, and then a rehab, and then after that I started to get well, and then a few years later Mark and I, and then that brings you up to now. But in 2011, in the beginning of the year, I was 3 months into a halfway house for drug and alcohol concerns. But prior to that, I was in the rehab where I met Mark. That was the end of 2010. So beginning of 2011 looks promising. I'm in a halfway house. I was like senior client. I'm star patient. I'm always star patient or junior therapist. It's so obnoxious. But, because I usually don't want those roles. I just don't act up and they give them to me. And I get through there and I'm like, great. And I had at the time like 9 months sober. So I get home. After 7 months in treatment, I needed a drink. So I decided to have one and undo all that time, all the healing my brain had done, all the resocialization I had done, back to being kind of like a recluse and a drinker. And I had spent then most of that summer watching Bravo reruns. A lot of Real Housewives, which I don't even like. What else was it? There was this Britney Spears song that they were using to promote a Bravo series that was coming up. It was awful. I remember hearing it over and over and over and over. It was terrible. And I was drinking a lot of Listerine at the time. So, I was in rough shape, and I was getting fatter and fatter, because obviously I didn't care, you know. And, of course, me would pick a drug of choice with calories. You know, there's so few, and of course I'd get one for myself. And I was getting bigger and bigger and sicker and sicker. Well, it all came to a head, I want to say the week before Thanksgiving. And I just wasn't doing well. I had been purging. For anyone, let me just catch you up real quick here if you're hearing this story. I have a history with mental health concerns. I have bipolar type 1. I have a history with eating disorders, kind of non-specified at this point, because they're more mental hang-ups that I have periodically than behaviors. I don't really have the behaviors. Some generalized anxiety, all this fun stuff. Substance dependence, I got it all, okay? I got it all. So I ended up going to the hospital because I had been purging and I started spitting blood. And I was drunk like around the clock and I wasn't taking my medication at the time as directed, so off to the ER I go. Now when I'm there getting examined for, they give me like the thing where you take the dye and then they CAT scan, MRI, whatever that was. And that showed up fine. What I'd actually done was scratch the back of my throat with my fingernail, and that's what it ended up being. While I was there, I said something when I was drunk, and next thing I know, I'm in the psych ward the next day. So, prior to going to the hospital that time, again, week before Thanksgiving, I had been diagnosed, like I said, with bipolar disorder, and I had been being treated with a certain round of medication that is often prescribed for folks with bipolar disorder, which usually includes an antidepressant, a couple mood stabilizers, and a lot of those are anticonvulsants, maybe an antipsychotic medication, something for anxiety. Everybody's cocktail is different. Some people only use one medication, some people use two, some people use 10. Everyone's body is different. Meds that may have saved your life may have given me lockjaw, so it's not always reasonable. I'll have people ask sometimes, what meds do you take? Because you seem fine. It doesn't work like that. Certainly we can share our stories and our experience, but my metabolism, my cocktail changes. It changed 3 weeks ago. I had to have an adjustment. So it's more fluid and it's not as precise. So I get to the hospital and Dr. Freud, the psychiatrist, decides I'm not bipolar. I probably never was. I was just a drunk. So I get taken off my antidepressants because his opinion is that any antidepressant is bad for a person with bipolar, which person to person, again, it depends. I can tolerate a low dose of an antidepressant to bring the bottom up on my mood. He didn't seem to think it was necessary, so he prescribes me an anticonvulsant and an antipsychotic, and that's it. No, he left the antidepressant that time. He said the antipsychotic was going to help it work better and work faster, and I would feel better faster. So, trusting as any old idiot, I take the medicine, I go home, and I take it. And Thanksgiving, I was manic as hell. I made half a dozen side dishes that we don't even usually use. I mean, I'm in the kitchen, I'm hanging out, I'm like making side dishes. I made like scalloped cabbage. I don't even like know what's in it. Peas with mint, deviled eggs, 2 kinds of deviled eggs, all sorts of other stuff. Biscuit, like things that we don't normally have at the Thanksgiving table. It's usually a pretty set spread that we have at my parents' house when we host, even when we have company. But I was making all sorts of shit, all these side dishes. I had to sleep on the couch because we had company. So even though I had just gotten out of the hospital, I was staying in the living room, actually, at the time. So I was recouping there. And I was recouping, I thought, okay. I was up very early in the morning, and I had my niece and nephew visiting who were very young at the time. And I was up, you know how kids wake you up early and they want to color and shit? I was up early waiting for them to get up so we could all color and shit. Now, I like my niece and I like my nephews. They're good kids. But I'm not really a little kid person. And it was out of character for me to be so excited to draw at 6 a.m. with children. I mean, look at me. Does it look like I'd want to? No, now that they're older, they're more fun. They have personalities, they can talk and stuff. It's a lot more fun. But it was very out of character for me. I started going for walks. Thanksgiving. It's getting to winter. It's cold. And I was about 280 pounds at the time. Maybe 290. I was getting pretty big. And I'm walking around in the cold and I'm freezing and I'm just getting more and more excited and less sleep and more hyper. So we come to 2 weeks later. Now I haven't had a drink at that point since I got out of the hospital, because I had been drinking off and on, mostly on, up until that first one where the doctor said, just a drunk, changed my meds. 2 weeks later comes to a head. I can't take life anymore. I can't sit still. I can't keep up with myself. I'm restless. I feel like I have restless leg over my whole body. My mind is racing. I can't deal with it. So I run my ass over to Dollar Tree and get a bottle of Listerine. I come home, I drink half of it, and that's when I lose my shit. So, again, no trigger warnings. I'll try to use, coded language if I need to. So, I'm watching Rachel Ray in the living room. I don't know, her daytime show? Maybe it was the cooking show? I don't really remember. And I'm watching it, and I'm giggling, so I must have been not well, because Rachel Ray's show sucks. So I'm laughing and I'm giggling, and then the commercial hits, and I'm looking for some relief. I'm gonna explode out of my skin. I am so hyped up. Self-injury was nothing I had usually done prior to, it was nothing I had considered seriously. I had cut myself before, but this it felt so necessary. It felt literally like I was gonna burst out of my skin. So I go to the basement and find a box cutter, and but what ends up happening is I'm watching Rachel Ray, laughing along, and then during the commercial breaks, taking a big slug of Listerine and cutting into myself. And I'd get a little get a little scared and cut a little and get a little scared and then longer, deeper, da da da. So in the middle of this, it comes to me that I'm not doing quite well. So I call mom at work. My mother doesn't work very far. It's a very small town that I was living in with my parents. I was like, Mom, I'm not doing well. This is happening. She's like, okay, I'll try to get out, as early as I can. You need to give me some time to get home. Because I had been having these melodramatic meltdowns often. I mean, Ophelia, like just, trips to the ER once every 2 weeks because I want to die, and then I sober up in the ER, and then I'm like, fuck it, I just want to have a drink. I don't want to go to a psych ward for 5 days, and I would leave. So I'm home. Me and Rachel called Mom. It got worse because now I'm getting closer to things that could bleed a lot more. And it was on my arms where I was doing it. And I called again, and my mom calls her sister, my aunt, who's my favorite aunt of, the whole family. She's very much like my mother, but a little more chill. My mom's pretty high-strung, kind of anxious. My aunt has this wicked sense of humor. She's very chill. She's retired, and she's a retired psychiatric nurse. She worked at a psych hospital turned prison for years, and she retired from that. So she comes over. So I hear from Mom that my aunt's coming over. So I decide I need to put out a nice little spread because we have company coming. So I put on a fresh pot of coffee, and I get out the good china, and the cups, and the cream, and the sugar, and get it all together. And she's coming, and she brings cookies, of all things. Because my meltdown is very matter of fact, I guess, to her, because she's seen so much. So we're sitting at the dining room table, very sensibly. I have a towel wrapped all the way up my arm to cover the injuries and, whatnot. I had some burns on this arm, but they didn't really need tending to. All wrapped up, and I'm just eating a cookie with one hand and having coffee, and we're talking. My mother comes home. A friend gave her a ride home from work. So now it's my house and my aunt, my mom, and me. And my mother comes in, and she's like, what's going on? We're sitting there. I'm manic as hell, half drunk, crying, antsy, can't sit still, wrapped up to my elbow, and we're having cookies. The good fancy Italian cookies, too, with the jelly in the middle, and they dip one side in chocolate. They were so good. And coffee was the last thing I needed, but we had coffee. So I'm kind of bumming around the house, trying to, I don't know what I'm doing, because I'm not sure what they're going to do with me. I suspect we're going to the hospital, but I don't really know. I'm not thinking too much further ahead than the next laugh, the next this, the next that. I mean, I'm very much in the moment at the time. And very energetically in the moment. So apparently my mother pulls my aunt into the kitchen to talk, and my aunt's assessment is that it looks like a medication thing. It looks like something's wrong. So off to the hospital we go. Again, 2 weeks later. This is the closest to hospitalizations I've had back to back. So we leave the good china, and we leave the crystal sugar bowl, and the one with the cream in it, and the cookies. And I take my wrapped up arm, and a cookie for the road, and we go to the hospital, which luckily is only across town. That hospital has since closed. It actually means now that you have to drive to Scranton from that small town, which is a half-hour drive, to get treatment. So back up we go. I can't sit still. I cannot sit still. I'm doing laps around my bed in the psych triage area. And then I see the doctor who prescribed the meds last time because I wasn't bipolar. I was just a drunk. So I come back, and he said, what the hell happened to you? I said, I took my meds as directed. At your direction, I took them. So we revamp, and we change the medications I'm taking. We come off the antipsychotic. We had something else in its place, something for anxiety. I forget what he did. It's not the cocktail I'm on now. It's not even close. And I don't like the doctor who did it for a number of reasons. I would never dox. But I would hope to spread word that this guy was not doing his job. I run into him in the psych ward. I ran into him in prison, and he fakes charts. But at any rate, so another doctor took over for him because he did the first day, and then I never saw him again. Some other doctor came and saw me every other morning after that. So I'm the only person in that psych ward at the time because the hospital is closing, so it's me and one of the technicians, and I barely sleep. I get up every morning, I'm coloring pictures and sending them to my nieces and nephews. I'm pacing up and down the halls. I'm like, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a stimulant, drank way too much coffee, got an adrenaline rush for any reason, but that was the physical part of the drug-induced kind of mania that I was having. It was brought on by the substance. It wasn't a part of my natural cycle that usually happens. I'm pretty predictable with my mood cycles. They're a little off lately, but more or less you can set your clock to them. This came out of nowhere because it was brought on by a bad cocktail of drugs. That didn't wear off until March of the following year. So I got all through Christmas, and it was the same busybody stuff, and then I'm going to outpatient mental health treatment, and I'm like hyper, so I'm super active and volunteering for everything and super high functioning, and sitting in a day program I look a little out of place because the folks who are there need a lot of support, and I do, but I'm not on the depressed end of things where I need someone to like help me write a plan to get out of the house more, or something where I need to be more med compliant. Never have a problem taking meds. You can, hand over fist if you can prescribe them, I'll take them. But I felt really out of place in outpatient treatment too. And I would walk there. 20 degrees, I'd have on a sweatshirt. The staff would be walking by. And I'd be getting there like an hour early because I'd get up at 7, and then I'd go to group, and then I'd be done at like 2, and then I'd go home and cook a bunch, and then eat, and then I'd go to bed watching the movie Defending Your Life every night with Al Brooks and Meryl Streep. I don't know why, it was the only DVD I had, I think. And I wouldn't eat after 6, and during this mania, in these 2 months, I lost 40 pounds. Just like that, with no particular interest in dieting. I was just walking around like crazy and fidgeting, and I wasn't as hungry because I was manic as fuck. So it took a while for me to come back down from that, and the crash was terrible. It was terrible. The crash happened in the beginning of 2012. Now, Mark had moved in at this point. Shortly after I got out of the second psych ward, Mark moved in a month later. And that was helpful, but I still got sick again and started drinking in about April. I started again. And Mark knew but didn't know, but knew but didn't know, and my parents knew but didn't know, but knew but didn't know. And then I went to the shrink, and they had me on 3 antidepressants all at the same time, and it wasn't cracking through. I was just, what goes up must come down. And it was the kind of depression where you're like a little bit suicidal, like all the time. It's like, I'm not going to look both ways when I cross the street. I'm not going to make a big deal about walking around with an umbrella in a lightning storm. Little parasuicidal things like that. And that's when I ended up going into the hospital for the last time. And then the last time in that period. And they changed up my meds to a good cocktail, and for the time. And then I got out. And then I ended up in jail a week later. And then rehab. And then that started what the journey is now. So the Mad Tea Party, as it were, was an interesting, ridiculous, not funny, but funny blurb that happened. I can't imagine my mother's vision when she walked in and saw me wrapped up to the elbow, kind of crying, kind of laughing, kind of smelling like menthol, having cookies and coffee with her sister. Like, it probably sounded so serious over the phone. I don't know what she thought she'd walk into, but it looked like we were just having a nice visit. So strange. So strange. But I guess it ended well anyway. My mom asked, big words, my aunt to help a couple of times. She came over then, she gave me a ride home before, from the hospital, and she's good. I like my aunt. And her kids. I like my cousins on that side of the family too. Well, I like them on both sides of my family, actually, but I don't see my cousins on my father's side as much as I do on my mom's. So that was a blurb on the radar. That was a part of the journey that kind of stuck out a little bit. It was getting towards the end of it, and that's how messy it was starting to get, too. And, you know, in some defense of the psychiatrist and the psychiatrists and nurses, a lot of times when I showed up to the emergency room, I had alcohol in my system. It's very difficult to diagnose someone who's under the influence. So I will give them that much, but not much more. You know, the nurses there are some amazing nurses in this world. There are some amazing nurses in this world. And then there's one or two that suck. And you always run into those one or two here and there. But the other half dozen to a dozen that are great make up for it. You know, you go to Walmart, there's great employees and terrible employees. The consequences of a bad nurse could be a bit more than someone who's not good at stocking shelves. So that's a little, you know. There was a nurse there that wore heels. What the hell are you wearing heels for? And scrubs? Heels and scrubs? What if there's an emergency? That has nothing to do with it. I'm sorry. So, thank you for listening. There's different, you know, highs and lows that came along. You know, getting sick, getting well, getting sick, getting well. And this was the final. Madness had ended pretty much in 2012. And this was in the last 6 months of it. So, luckily everyone was patient with me. And I was able to get well in a, you know, it took me a while to recover from all of that. It took me about 1.5 years before I was able to start working full time again. And then start a relationship and get an apartment, you know, because people recover, we get well. I look back at that now, it's so funny. Like, those memories I don't have through my eyes. You know, I don't have a first person look at the Mad Tea Party or the rooms in the ER, or talking to the doctor. It's almost like I see it from a third-person perspective, almost like I was there watching it, like it wasn't me looking through my eyes at it. It's very strange, very detached, some of the memories I have. It's not all of them, but it's enough of them that I noticed. So, I don't know. If I need to go to the hospital again, I will. I have. I went in February before COVID started. I hope I don't have to go again. If I need to go again, I will. Hopefully I don't get drug-induced mania again. That would be very different. I would be inclined to not want to show that on camera, but I would also say that I would want you guys to see it because it's fucking weird. We'll see, we'll see. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. This was a good little story time. Things like this keep it green for me. Kind of shows me when I think it's a rough day or a rough week. That's what rough days look like. And that's waiting for me if I don't take care of myself. So, keeps it green for me, and thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe. Hit the notification bell on your way out so you get alerts when we have new videos and when we go live. You can follow us on Facebook at SmokeySteveAndMarc or on Instagram at SmokeySteveAndMarc. Our email address and contact information's all below as well. Thank you again, and I will catch up with you tomorrow for some coffee talk with one Miss Foodie Beauty who just can't get it together. Can't get it together. We'll go a little more in depth tomorrow, okay? Thanks for watching. Bye.